Hey everybody, welcome to the It Takes Two podcast, our two crew. Welcome to episode number 9. We're excited to be here today and glad that you're joining us.
Yeah, we're so excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to share today. I just think we've we did a little bit of research on the topic of the top 3 marriage killers.
Yeah, we're researchers now. No big deal.
But, wanting to identify what are the issues that a lot of people face, maybe some preventative measures to take, or if that's what you're facing now, how to move forward. Obviously, we believe that marriage is fun. There's a lot of great things to have happen, but we want to protect the fun. And so we thought this would be a great topic to talk about.
Yeah, and it's going to be an awesome episode we'll get into in a second. But before that, thank you all to our two crew who follow along and listen every single week. We're appreciative that you guys are enjoying it. And so if you could, just make sure that if you haven't yet, leave a review wherever you're watching, YouTube, podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you're enjoying about the comments or about the podcast. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment letting us know what you like about the episode, because that kind of just helps get the videos and the podcast out into the world, get us ranked and all that good stuff. And
very good.
Very good, yes.
Very good.
So, we're just appreciative of everybody that listens and follows along. You guys mean the world to us. And so we're going to get started with a popular segment. People liked it last time we did it, so we're going to do it again. We are doing Take or Fake.
I love this. And I was in a conversation maybe it was like a week ago. And this topic came up and I was like, I'm writing that down. I want to talk about this for Take or Fake.
Write that down.
Yeah, well, because, we have a shared note where we go through and write down things that we want to share on the podcast.
Yeah.
And if we have topics, maybe like little notes we don't want to forget to share. And so I was like, oh, we are doing this.
So the first Take or Fake, if you haven't done the segment or listened to one of the episodes where we do it, basically we just talk about something that's normally discussed about marriages and dating and whatever, things that you probably would hear before. And
misconceptions, maybe?
Yeah, misconceptions. We're kind of like mythbusters of relationships. So we say whether you should take it or whether we think it's fake and you should drop it. So the first Take or Fake, we just have 2 today, but the first one is talking about the honeymoon phase.
Oh, the honeymoon phase.
You ever hear that where it's like, in marriage or dating, there's the honeymoon phase and it's all awesome. And then you get over that and then, it's just different. A lot of people would say it's worse, but that's what I guess the honeymoon phase is. And so would you like to give your 2 cents on what you think?
Yeah, when I heard that initially, I was like, honeymoon phase. Oh, that's like such a big thing in any relationship, but especially in the context of marriage. You go on your honeymoon.
Right.
Obviously, it's like, oh, the first week you're married, you take this amazing trip, you spend time, just the 2 of you, having an incredible experience where there's none of life's responsibilities and you're not doing laundry, you're not cleaning, you're not working, you're not doing errands.
Yeah.
You're just enjoying each other's company. So the honeymoon phase. So when I hear about it and I think about it in that context, I'm like, well, that's not really real life. That's like a vacation to
Unless
start
you're
your
a trust fund
relationship.
baby.
Wow, if you are, write in.
Good
We
for
would
you.
love to hear more about
And
your
we would love to
experiences.
go on a trip with you sometime.
Yeah,
to
bring
Bora
us
Bora.
along. So when I think about it in that way, I can think that's not really the way the term is used. It's meaning maybe that first month of your relationship or first few months where all you're doing is just you're gaga for each other. But I don't know. I feel like that just makes it seem like it loses its luster, and I don't really like that. I think it's fake.
You think fake? Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand what it's saying. I understand it's like, yeah, the beginning is always a little bit different, but just because it changes doesn't mean it's worse. And I think that's the misconception of a honeymoon phase of like, because it's like, we don't fight or, we're having a good time, all this. And people will say, you guys must still be in the honeymoon phase. So, I think if you date somebody long enough, I feel like you're willing to I agree in the beginning, you might make more allowances and you might let things go and, not get as irritated at each other than over time. But that doesn't mean that the relationship is worse off. So, I mean, I would say in general, I don't know. I mean, are we saying take or fake the honeymoon is even a thing? Like the honeymoon phase?
The concept, are you like, yes, this is a real thing? Or are you like, nah, fake news?
I think the honeymoon phase is a real thing, but I think that, you really know if you want to be with somebody after the initial honeymoon phase, because then it's like, I mean, in marriage, if you say yes, then, you're stuck with them. But just in general, in dating, like, I think the honeymoon phase is real. And that's why I feel like most relationships, get to a certain point and then they break up because they start arguing and realizing, oh, actually, when you do that, it annoys me. And they're not willing to work through those things.
I just feel like it's like this connotation that everything afterwards is never going to be as good as it was. And I also feel like, okay, maybe the reason that's true for you is the effort you're willing to put in isn't the same as it was in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's on you. I don't think that's a time period issue. I think that's a you issue.
That's fair. That's fair enough.
So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I just hate that negative connotation that after that it's like downhill. But I do feel like that's like a personal thing.
Sounds like a personal problem.
I don't know. I don't know. When I heard that, it just kind of made me sad to be like, oh, it doesn't have to be. It just makes it sound really negative afterwards. And I just I don't like that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think our marriage is better now than it was year one. And it was great year one.
I'm obsessed with you.
I'm obsessed with you too. So I'm glad. I think that
I'm obsessed with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I guess I would take it. You would fake it. I would take the idea of it.
But, this is probably one of the first times we've disagreed on a topic like this.
Yeah. All right. So let's.
Oh my gosh, I'm so scared.
Let's stop recording and we'll redo it after we agree on something.
Oh, but it's okay to disagree on certain things.
Yeah.
And this is proof of that.
Okay. So honeymoon phase, that's one. I take, you fake. And then the second one is.
One bank account.
Yeah. Should couples have one bank account? What do you think?
Well, we have one bank account.
True.
So from my personal experience, I think it can just be really hard when you enter into a marriage and it's like, who pays for what? Like I wish I had my computer up here, but we put all of our money into one account when we get paid.
Well, you're going to show everybody our computer?
Well, I was going to show them. We use this budgeting system called Snowmint.
Yeah.
It's like an application. It's $40 online. You can buy it. And it's like, you've heard of people probably doing finances where there's, physical envelopes where you put things in. Yeah. And when it's gone, it's gone. We have virtual envelopes. So when we get paid, everything gets automatically dispersed to the bills and then, whatever else we want it for. So I don't know, when we do it, dispersing wise, it's proportional from our paychecks of what bills are being paid for. But I feel like, what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours.
Right.
And when you have more than one bank account, it can feel like it doesn't, well, I don't know. I guess if you don't, I'm curious to know why you don't have one bank account. But I think it can start to feel like what you make is your money. And I think that what we make is our money.
Totally. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I don't think you should have multiple bank accounts. I don't really see a reason for it. And I've heard of people have separate bank accounts out there. Like, I think a lot of people do. But personally, I'm just like, I don't see the point of it. And you can't you really can't argue, again, going back to like kind of the budgeting system that we use, you can't really make an argument for organization in 2023 because there's so many apps and softwares out there that helps you kind of disperse whatever's in there. So I don't know. I think that's a take. Like, I absolutely think you should have one bank account. I think having multiple, if you have multiple, then each person should definitely have access to it.
Yes.
But I just think it leaves why? It just leaves room for not having accountability. And yeah, I think on the minimum, it gives the impression of this is mine, this is yours. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that's a healthy environment with finances in marriage.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting when it comes to when you're buying something or something needs to be repaired, it's like, well, who's paying for it? It's like when you're dating, like we said that we agree that we think the guy should pay. Yeah. So then when you're, going on dates, is the husband always paying from his bank account? And then what are you paying for if you have your own account?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or how is the husband
maybe if you have a good argument for this, you could tell us, but.
How is the husband able to be a provider if you're living separate financial lives?
Right. And like the disbursement of money between two people, it's like we have our own money and we agree with certain things. Like, oh, I need to get my hair. I don't need to get my hair cut. I want to get my hair cut.
Well, I'm super glad that you maintain yourself.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, hey, I need X amount of money for once a month. And so it's like, okay. And so, yeah, that's like my purchase, but we talk about it and it's within one account. So I don't know. I don't see a good reason for it. I say take one bank account.
I say take one bank account, but if you have more than one bank account,
stop. I'm just kidding.
Please write in and explain yourself.
Yeah.
Not because, oh, like, I can't believe you do that, but because I'm honestly super curious.
And we're talking about marriage.
Yeah. People who are married.
If you are dating, you should not have one bank account.
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
So we would love to hear your perspective, and maybe we'll follow up with that.
Yeah. Great. All right. You want to get into the 3 killers of marriage? It's kind of a
wah. Yeah, I have the same thing, but yeah, I think when you talk about things that are really difficult for marriages and what can make them come to a conclusion, there are 3 standout topics, and even just from the research we've done, there's 3 standout topics that really can drive a marriage into the ground.
Mm-hmm. And okay, by marriage killers also, we're talking about like statistically and from what we've seen, like
Totally.
These are the reasons, not because it happens, but because of like what produces as a result of it. So we're not saying if this happens to you, fear for your marriage. No, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying like what ends up resulting as, at the end of these things, if not handled properly and submitted to God, then it creates a lot of havoc in a marriage. And that's what we're saying. It's not like if this happens to you, your marriage is done for. No, we're just saying these are things to be aware of.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to talk, the first one that we put down is finances. Which
Great
we kind of just talked
segue
about
from
a little
one
bit.
bank account,
What
but
a smooth segment.
you can see
Segue.
Segue.
Did you say segment or did I?
You did.
Segue.
You'll watch us back and be like, oh, she was right again.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
She is always right. He's drinking water. He can't
Fake.
protest. Yeah, finances. I think that the financial pressures of life sometimes can be so heavy. And when it comes to like practical things that can really drive people apart, this is like a really like everyday practical issue that can be a huge struggle for relationships.
I mean, it makes sense because finances is like our means of life. It's like how we buy things, how we provide. So obviously something that is so central to our lives is going to have heavy implications when it comes to a relationship. And so a lot of that obviously is financial pressure. And we could talk about both because I think a lot of people are in the camp of needing more money. We talk about that a lot, but we also don't talk about like how, money can become an idol in marriages. And if you're if you're really well off, then that can also be a hindrance too. But I think financial strain is just when you feel like you don't have enough of something, obviously that creates a level of chaos in your mind at times. And because of that worry and anxiety and then
lack of security,
and that can just get projected onto your person. I mean, that can get projected onto anybody really. And so I think that's why it's always important to have finances on like the forefront of what you talk about. Because I mean, honestly, this is like the way that I think sometimes we both can get in this, but me personally, it's like in the times where it was like financial strain in a sense of like, I'm like, I don't want to talk about it because then it's real, If you start talking about it, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is like actually real and we have to deal with it.
And I think when you avoid confrontation of something that needs to be addressed, like it just makes it even harder as it goes on. I can think back to a time where we had financial strain. We had an investment. It did not go well.
To say the least.
To say the least. And that was really difficult for us.
Yeah. It was super difficult. And that was like, I feel like every single time we've had, and it's not even like, we've been in seasons of life where like we're not even we aren't needing anything, honestly. Like okay, the bills are paid. We're very, very, very strict budgeting because like we don't have barely any or extra.
But we're blessed and we're provided for and we have what we need.
And I just think that you find yourself thinking that it's worse off and like you can't talk about it. But at least in my opinion, you can, disagree with this, but I feel like the times where we've like talked about it and like, okay, even if the conclusion is, oh, okay, we don't have a lot of money. But like that, like just sitting down, looking at it together, being on the same page, I feel like gives a lot more peace for us. And like, okay, we're both on the same page. We both know that we don't have a lot, but at least we're both here.
We also like have had in those times when we sat down, okay, but what's our plan? What are we going to do with what we have? If there's something that we need, what's our plan to move forward so that we can have that? And just that open communication of just, here's the reality, and then here's how we move forward, I think just lets us both be involved and then feel like there's a sense of understanding, and just being together on that kind of subject is, I don't know, it's just super important. But
yeah. And you have to realize also like where like how each other operates, where Adrian is a lot more like administratively disciplined and like has her like knows things. I'm more like in the wind in my mind and so with stuff like this, it's always interesting because I'm always err on the side of like, you know what, it's all gonna work. It's all gonna be good. It's all gonna work out. God's gonna provide, which is good in some areas, and you do need that in some. But in others, I've realized that like that's not an adequate answer for the way that you're feeling.
Yeah, it's all gonna work out.
How?
I'm sure it will, but I'd love to know how.
Yes.
Like, cause I don't see what you're seeing, or I guess, yeah. Especially if I'm the one who administratively, like I'll pay our, monthly bills or whatever and, calculate where everything's going. And I'm like, wait, well, the pennies, nickels, and dimes matter to me. And I want to know where you're seeing this.
Yeah. And it's a weakness on my part of like not, and I realized, it's okay. Okay. The idea of, okay, if I think that God is going to do what only God can do, then I at least have to do what I can do. So that's like,
Definitely.
That's what Adrian, you needed. It's like, okay, well, God can come through. Absolutely. He can do, anything he wants to do. But in the meantime, as we wait on God to really come through, what are we going to do? And that's where I had to really grow in talking at least about finances. So it's like, I feel like people are usually on one side of the spectrum or the other of like, oh, I don't know, it'll be good. Or on the other side, it's like you stress so much. And that stress like eats you alive. So
but you avoid it and don't talk about it. But I think also what can bring a lot of financial strain is trying to live above your means.
Yes.
Because you want to be accepted, or you want to have the nicest clothes that are out, and you want to all your friends maybe want to go on trips or go out to meals, and you're not able to do that because of the season you're in. I think that can put a lot of strain on you because you're living outside of what you're actually bringing in, and the neglect and the irresponsibility can cause a lot of strain. And maybe that's only one person, maybe it's the way you both live because you wish life was different. But we've known couples where the husband has just such a spending problem, and they're like, or the husband will be like, the wife she knows what the grocery budget is, and she like goes over it every single time. Or like, oh, my husband, like he'll just go out and like he'll get the new drop of, whatever it is every single time new clothes come out. And it's like, okay, well, obviously we don't have that. Where's that coming from? So what would you say to couples that maybe it's not a mutual issue? It's like it's one-sided and they're trying to live responsibly, but their, spouse is not.
I mean, I would say you have to somehow get on the same page. And I think a lot of times it's just not addressed. Like a lot of stuff in marriage, it happens because it's permitted. And if something's happening that you're not happy with, a lot of times, I mean, obviously there's exceptions to this rule, but a lot of times it's because it's just been permitted. And so like even in our dynamic, generally I'm the one that's like, oh, I'm not even thinking, okay, I'm going to go out on Friday and do this. And then Adrian's like, We have $2 for the rest of the week, so you're actually not gonna do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, because I think some people just naturally don't think that way, and it's not an excuse of any means, but you have to be very intentional with budgeting.
I think virtual money also can be
credit cards.
Well, just in general, like not using cash can be a really deceptive form of payment because you just think you have so much more than you do. And so if that's something that someone's struggling with, maybe that spouse goes to a cash system or a physical envelope system, because when it's out, and like use what you want, however you want it, like it's our money, but like you're not going to go beyond that and put us in a place that compromises our well-being.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a really good point of you just have to, sometimes you just have to take extreme measures if you're in a place of like extreme, whatever.
Confinement.
Yeah. And so it always pays off in the end to be a lot more mindful of it and to know that, okay, we have to take sacrifice. We have to have the conversations. We have to acknowledge these things, because if we don't, that's what ruins it. It's the level of, okay, it's not financial lack, but it is the emotions and the feelings that overtake us and our inability to deal with it. That's the problem, I think.
I think it's just a really big, I don't know how you say, but like confrontation that feels uncomfortable. And so when you can't address the uncomfortable confrontation, something like finances, it can grow into something really unhealthy.
And sometimes you get used to a way of living, like a standard of a living, and you just have to look at it and be like, we can't do this. We can't keep doing this. And cutting back from that hurts a ton. And saying, oh, I actually can't do this now. And it's not even like...
There was a year one time where we told our families, like, and it was tearful and it was embarrassing. And we're like, you know what? We can't do Christmas gifts this year.
Yeah.
It's just not happening for us. We've had a lot of transition and we love you guys. And like, I'm a gifts person, so it really hurts me not to do this, but like, we can't do that. And we ended up just printing Christmas cards. That's the first year we did it. And that's why we did it, is because we couldn't give anyone any gifts.
I don't think we even got each other gifts that year.
We spent $50.
$50 on each other, yeah.
Exposed. But we did buy each other like one smaller item, and that's all we did.
And to that point, though, it's so funny because it was embarrassing, and it was like, you're dreading that conversation. And of course, our whole family was like, oh, we love you guys. Like, we understand.
No one ever made us feel bad about that.
And nobody ever will.
The reality is,
well,
like,
if they
okay.
do, they kind of suck. But
yeah, they do, then they're exposing themselves.
Yeah.
But I think actually having to take the practical measures to make ourselves like be in a healthy financial state, it took sacrifice and it really sucked. But it's sometimes things that you have to do. And if your spouse struggles with that, it doesn't mean that like they suck as a person, like,
I mean, they might, but
they might. Sure. But everyone has different things that they struggle with. And so if they need correction in that, and it causes like, okay, we need to have actual boundaries and like real practical steps to help you grow through this, then one, if you're that person, don't be ashamed by that. Like, know that your person cares enough about your well-being to help put you in a position where you can be responsible and learn that responsibility. And if you need to do that for your spouse, then, don't shame them. Make them know how much you love them, and this is a way that they can grow, and maybe there's something that you can grow into, and be open to that yourself. You are not the Queen of Sheba.
True. Unless you're watching and you are the Queen of Sheba.
That would be cool.
No, that's a good point. It all stands. I mean, this is like, finances matter. It is a biblical principle. It is stewardship. So if you're not doing that, then obviously that's going to lead to issues. It's all about proper stewardship, taking care of things correctly, and being on the same page.
And doing everything is unto the Lord. That's what the scripture says. So
everything unto the Lord.
Everything. Yeah. Finances, everything.
That's awesome. All right, what's our next one?
The next topic that we wanted to talk about is loss.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like statistically, I believe, number one.
Is it number one?
I think so. I think it depends study to study, but I think it's arguably the number one. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times what will cause what will kill a marriage is a level of, deep loss and traumatic loss in a family and in your situation, in people, loved ones, that will create, a rift. And so I think this one is like a lot more, it's like finances we talk about, and it's, loss is like, I mean, it's like one of the heaviest, hardest things that you could talk about in life.
I don't think people know how to process grief though, because not everyone has to encounter that.
Yeah.
And so, or, at different stages of life. And so people just don't talk about it. They don't know how to help. And the truth is that everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
And so, if you're married to someone and you're both experiencing grief and you don't process the same way, that is okay. That's totally normal. But then, you have different needs than they do. And when you can barely take care of yourself, but they also need your care as well, I mean, that can just cause a huge strain on relationships. And it's something that is completely out of your control.
Exactly.
It's not that you put yourself in this position to experience grief and loss, like it happened to you, and now you're left in a position where you have to figure it out.
And any time that you experience that, obviously it's going to be, one of the worst points that you've ever been at. And in those seasons, in those worst times, that's when that's the biggest area that like our unhealthy characteristics come out. Mm-hmm. And that's why, I mean, it's very, it's similar to finances, where it's like when you're struggling and you feel like you're not doing well, that's when like if you have things that you haven't dealt with, they come out as monsters, and like anger comes out, bitterness comes out, jealousy comes, all of these things come out because of the fact that like you're dealing with such a hard thing. And hard things tend to be a breeding ground for those unhealthy characteristics and personality traits to come out of you. And I think it might be jarring to people, like, who are you? Like when you experience that, because some people, face a level of loss and they're like, I haven't come close to this type of feeling in my entire life and place. And so because of that, I feel like that's when those things come out of you, in a terrible way.
And hopefully when you're meeting your spouse for the first time, you're meeting them in a healthy place. So you're seeing all the best parts of them, the best versions of them. And even when you read about the Enneagram personality test and things like that, it'll show, well, this is your personality, but in unhealth, this is how you react. And this is how you are. I think we talked about this before, where I'm a loyalist, but I can be possessive if I'm not healthy.
Yes.
So when you're seeing those things come out, and maybe it's the first season where you've experienced unhealth to this degree together, and all of a sudden a new personality trait comes out that you've never seen before. It's like you don't really know how to deal with that. But I think the best thing that you can do in this kind of season is to just have so much empathy and really just let them process how they're going to process within bounds. I mean, we're not running to things that are going to cause us to be more unhealthy. We're not going to run to, alcohol or drugs or other things like that. But, let them process how they're going to process. Try to be there for them as much as you can. And no, there's not really like a timeline for how people are supposed to process. I mean, if it comes to a point where you really can't continue in your daily life, of course, counseling is an incredible resource that can help you, process all of these wide emotions that you probably never had to experience before. Mm-hmm. But I think even just being open to counseling individually or together, it's probably good to do both, just because you have so much that you need to unpack. And I think just having the most empathy for your person is going to be the best thing that you can give them.
Absolutely. And, to further understand like the season, I just feel like sometimes it's so difficult, because what ends up happening is kind of like, I'm trying to explain this as best as I can. So, I think about Job, right? And like, the dude got his family taken away from him, his wealth, his everything, like his influence, everything taken away besides his wife. But, and it's crazy because in that story, you see Job and he's just like asking God, like, why? Like, why would you do this to me? I feel like I wasn't doing anything. And I think that like why question is so jarring and damaging. And it's crazy because like finally God answers Job, and he's like, dude, what, like, who did you create the stars? Did you create the heavens? Do you make the sun rise? Do you make the sun set? He's basically telling Job like you have no idea why I do what I do. And Job was like, you're so right. And he glorified God and got all of his stuff back and whatever. But I'm saying that question why, I feel like, is so, it's hard to wrestle with that, because especially with God, and that will cause you to kind of like, I mean, for lack of a better analogy, it's kind of like, I use this analogy sometimes where it's like a animal that gets caught in barbed wire, right? So it's like you're hurting, but you don't know where the pain is coming from, essentially. And so because of that, even if like the landowner comes and he's trying to clip away the barbed wire, like if an wounded animal is going to bite and scratch, because you don't know where to associate the pain, so you're afraid and you don't know where it's coming from. And I think the same thing can happen with a couple. It's like when you have something so traumatic happen and you don't really have anything to blame. I mean, you can blame Satan, but like a lot of times it's like, I have no idea.
It's no one's fault.
It's no one's fault. So you don't know where to put the blame, and you don't have anywhere to channel your anger. Then even somebody that's like loves you and is trying to help you, all of a sudden now you're like casting and projecting this anger onto them. And I think that's just like, you have to really wrestle with the question of like, I'm not going to figure out why, at least in this lifetime, it's just, I'm not going to get that answer, but I can press into Jesus and know that he gives me a peace beyond understanding. And because of that, you can navigate through it. But we haven't experienced, terrible loss. And so, it's different, obviously, if you're in it. So if you're in it, then, I would just encourage you that the perspective is to just cling close to those that love you and Jesus, and just take it day by day.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say too, like when you're experiencing loss, in whatever way that looks like for you, you're not probably ever going to get over your grief. I think people just who haven't gone through it are like, oh, like when are you going to start feeling better? I think you're always going to have that missing piece. When you're talking about loss, like you're going to have that missing piece. And it's not about how to get over it. I think it's how to integrate it into your daily life. You have extreme grief, and then how do you deal with this on a daily basis? And I think it's important that when you have experienced something like that, knowing that you're not erasing that part of your life, but then, how can you take what was lost and, commemorate that and make those special, moments that you have. I've talked to people about different ways they've incorporated people that they've lost into holidays and things like that. So just knowing that if you've lost someone, it doesn't mean that never happened, or that you never have to think about that again. No one can bring it up. I think it would be worse if no one ever acknowledged your pain, if no one ever acknowledged who you lost and tried to act like it didn't happen. I think even if it's painful to bring it up, I think people really do appreciate it, even if it's hard to handle.
Yeah. Who would you say, maybe like for your life, if you had loss, and who would you say like is a healthy boundary for like really who you're going to, in allowing people into like that innermost part of like what you're dealing with?
Well, if it's not you, then I would say your family is someone who, for some people, can always be there for you and be a healthy place to go to. But, if you have, pastors or mentors, people that you meet with, I think you want to talk to people that really can understand the gravity of what you're going through, that can, acknowledge your pain and not lead you to things that are going to cover it up, but who can walk you through that pain.
Yeah.
And only you can answer who that is. I mean, I'm not going to go and have like some guy friend coddle me through my pain, but
hopefully not.
I'm just saying as a boundary, like I'm not going to go to a guy, but if there's a mentor or a pastor or family or, my spouse, like that's who I would go to. But recognizing who the people are that are healthy enough to walk through that journey with you and are going to lead you to the right ways of becoming whole.
Yeah. I think there's a level of, you want a good amount of wise counsel, but like you don't want too many people, because then it can get really overwhelming and you won't be able to hear through like the white noise of everybody's opinions and thoughts and matters. So you have to find close enough people that love the Lord and will give you wise counsel. Awesome. So you want to talk about, or you have something else?
No, I'm ready to talk about the third topic.
Okay. The third topic is betrayal.
Betrayal. And I think no one's surprised when they hear that this can be a top marriage killer, but it's real. And when you think about a marriage, it's built on so many things, but intimacy is one of them. And if you've lost trust with someone, it's, really hard to recover from. It is possible, but this is the only thing in scripture that I can see where God has distinctly said, if you're married, this is the only grounds to separate from
for divorce. And so, betrayal is, it's actually kind of crazy to me how many people experience it. I think even if you're in the middle of it, like even if something happened to you, but I think as we get older, as we, we're married 7 years now. So I think it's just been shocking, at least the last like 5 years, not even the last 5 years, probably honestly the last like 2 years.
Yeah, 2.
Of, oh, wow, like this is a lot more common than we realize, like with people that we know, with people that we knew in our past, with people we know now, with friends. Like, I'm like, wait, this is actually a lot. This used to be something that I heard about my friends' parents when I was a kid, you know? Oh, you hear about this couple in the church. But then when it's like, oh, these are people close to us, that's when you realize how much of a big deal it is. And because of that, how much you have to protect against it.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to talk about, like we talked about red flags last week. So what are the red flags that you can see in your relationship, and knowing if, maybe there's something to look out for. I think that's why we talk about like windows open, lights on, having transparency and having, no boundaries between us, but outside of us. Like, how do we protect our marriage? But I think if you're seeing someone who is overly defensive, I think that can be, a sign to be cautious of. Like, when someone is dishonest, they obviously want to like deny till they die. They want to take that with them. So when you're seeing someone who's maybe like going out of their routine or creating a new routine, it's something that's out of the ordinary. What do you, when you see things like that? I think those are just things to be aware of. Because a lot of times you're not going to have someone just come up to you and say, this is what's going on. Usually it's something that's uncovered through, an accident exploited through someone else's information that they have. And so, it doesn't get there immediately. Like, there are things that happen along the way that lead to that. So I think you have to watch out for those signs along the way.
That is a good point about being defensive. I mean, I feel like, if Adrienne ever came to me and she's like, hey, this is weird that you started doing this, or hey, you were talking to this person and you mentioned this, or whatever, I saw that you texted this, whatever it may be, my first initial response wouldn't really be defensive. It'd be more like apologetic, like, oh, ooh, sorry, that's weird that.
Like, oh, I didn't mean to hurt you that way.
Yeah, and I would feel uncomfortable, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like that's really that's really embarrassing that you would think that. And so there's just no reason to be defensive unless like you were crazy and you were like, oh my God, unless you were like being actually crazy. But I think what ends up happening a lot of times is like gaslighting in a relationship where, you deny till you die, and there's there, you're crazy. Why would you see that? And then obviously, later on it comes out. But a good point to make in betrayal, at least, I think, is like we were talking about divorce merit, and like if you choose to leave the person because they betrayed you, you have absolutely biblical grounds. But I will say, I feel like it's not talked about a lot, but if if betrayal happens and you're like, no, I'm going to stick by this person, which is absolutely your decision to make. It's your call. And we've had instances in our lives where it's like, hey, something happens with people that we love, and we, regardless of our feelings, because of course, like you hear somebody that does something to somebody you love, you're like, screw that person. That's like the initial response. You want
to write them off forever, but it's really not up to you.
It's not up to you. And so we, when that happens with people that we love, it's like, okay, If they are like, no, we're together, we're like, okay, we're for your marriage. Because that's what you have to, as a friend, like, whatever they choose, if you choose to be with their person, all right, we're with you. Like, let's make
And
this
what
work.
I've said is it's going to be really hard to actually walk through a divorce,
Oh, so
to
hard.
go through that grief, start all over, thinking, oh, how am I going to find someone else, to process your pain with someone that it's not even their fault. Like, that's really hard. It's also really hard to say, like, okay, you did this to me, but we're going to work on our marriage and
Yep.
we're going to fight through this.
Yep.
That's also hard. And you know what? It's completely your choice to choose your hard. But once you've chosen, you've chosen.
You've chosen.
And so, we've talked about this, if something like that happens and the Bible says you have grounds for divorce, but it's not an eternal option out,
Exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. Like the posture of your heart matters. So if you get cheated on and you're like, no, I'm going to stick by his side, 2 years, you made your decision. Now that you gotta own up to it. Then 2 years later, you can't be like, actually, never mind. See you later, because you have this get out of jail free card.
Right.
No, you make a decision and you stick by it. And so I think that's what we see sometimes with marriages is like somebody cheats on somebody else. And then this person that's been cheated on now stays together, but holds it over the other person's head like for forever.
Yeah, I think retaliation can be a big issue with relationships that have gone through betrayal. And just knowing that if someone has, been unfaithful to you, like, it's horrible, but it doesn't allow that to be reciprocated.
No, you make your decision and then you fight for your marriage. And I think that's, why God gives an out in that way. It's like, hey, you break covenant and now is the option, but you choose your option and you make your bed and you got to sleep in it. So
I think what's important though is when you have experienced betrayal is taking that time individually to process and to get clarity for what you need going forward, what you want to do going forward, and what you're committing to going forward. Because it's not just like we said, it's not a get out of jail free card for the end of time. When you have chosen to continue in your marriage, you have recommitted your life to together forever.
yeah, and you have to honor that commitment.
But that's why I think it's super important to process individually. Maybe you're separated for a time and you take time to be by yourself because you don't want this decision that's totally your decision. You don't want it to be influenced by what the other person is trying to, maybe gaslighting you or maybe what they're saying. Because of course, if they want to be with you, they're going to say whatever they can. But this has to be something that you can say, in my heart, I've created resolve to recommit my life to this person for better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
And that's totally your choice. But just knowing that when you do that, that's what you're committing to again. And that can be really, really hard. So what I'll always say is choose your heart. And I'll be by you either way because I think you have the grounds to do whatever you want to do. But if you're choosing to be with this person, you've got to know that, that's your choice.
That's your choice. I think it's like some study or statistic that from a point of betrayal, it's like 5 years or something on average of before you get to a point where you feel like you are in a place that you were prior to the knowledge of the betrayal. And it's a journey. It's a commitment, and but again, either route is hard. It sucks to be in that season, but you can get through it. And the hard part about it is allowing that to, ruin the trajectory of your life and ruin your outlook on life and ruin all those things to let a moment like that. But I don't think any of those are shockers.
No, but I think that if you are experiencing betrayal or you have experienced betrayal, knowing that there are so many resources out there for you beyond just friends
Sad
and
movies and
family.
chocolate.
Yeah, not just ice cream, but a lot of churches have divorce care groups or they have betrayal and beyond groups for women, or they have, purity groups for, whoever's had the infidelity. They have, you have professional counselors, you have pastoral care, you have marriage groups that now you can infiltrate to actually get the help you need to start healthy again. So, if that's something that you've experienced and you guys are walking through that together, know that there's so many resources out there to help you succeed going forward. It is possible to recover from that.
Yeah. And listen, it's not on you that it happened, but it is on you that you move on from it and you grow from it and you learn and you get past it and get through it.
And
that is on you.
Create better boundaries going forward, and they're going to have to be even more severe because of the lack of trust. But I mean, if you can figure out what those boundaries need to be, I think it can really, set you up to eventually walk through that.
Totally. Yeah. So finances, loss, and betrayal. Pretty obvious ones, but I think it's worth talking about because, it's not like you're talking about this at a, casual dinner out at a restaurant.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have too much shame to talk about like the struggles they really have in their marriage with friends, with family, because you want everyone to see your spouse as this incredible person. You don't want them to have a tainted image of them. And of course you want to protect them, but you also need the support. And so 100%. Just wanted to address that. But I think the underlining issue with all three topics is still communication.
Yeah. Oh, communication is key. I mean, being on the same page. That's what we talked about in all of them. Like, there is a route through all of this. And, obviously betrayal is a little bit different because there's an out. Finances and loss, you do not have an out. But in the first and second, and then in the third, if you choose to stay with the person, that's what it requires communication. Like, and it's something as simple as like, hey, today, it's like, I'm not, emotions wise, that's one of the things that I had to really grow in marriage is like, Adrian will just pour out her heart to me and I'm like, I don't know what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
But like it's helpful to Adrian if I'm just like, I had to learn that like sometimes I just need to be like, hey, today sucked for me. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I could totally understand. Rather than just like walking around all grumpy and it just takes a level of like, this is where I'm at, just so you know. Mm-hmm. And that helps work through whatever you guys are going through because we're a team.
Yeah. It's always healthy to say, this is how I'm feeling. Not anything about you.
Yes.
But like when this happened, this is how I feel. Yeah. And also if someone's not the person who's willing to just dish out that information, asking open-ended questions where they feel like they have the space to actually, share whatever it is they want to share. Because if you don't know what's going on or why they're acting the way they are acting, sometimes the issue isn't the issue. Yeah. So if someone's making mountains out of molehills, you got to know that something bigger is at play here.
Yeah.
And asking those open-ended questions so that they can feel like, sometimes like, all someone needs sometimes is an invitation. All you need is someone to check in on you, and all of a sudden the floodgates can open.
Yeah.
And, not being afraid to ask those questions.
It's crazy what literally just one conversation will do, like one open conversation that can just clear the air, make you feel like more of a team, make you feel like more of a unit. But yeah, those are three things to be aware of, to be, talk through. If you guys never talked about any of those three, maybe it's worth a conversation.
It's good to start. And, sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't do any of this. This is just happening to me. Well, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control your reactions to what's happening to you.
Yeah.
Or, to what someone has done to you. And so making sure that you're not living, in unforgiveness, that you're not being overly critical, that you're not stonewalling people.
Yep.
And you're not neglecting yourself or the people that, the person that you're with.
Yeah.
And people that hurt you. So I think just knowing that you have control over all those areas, and maybe that instance of what happened in finances or loss or betrayal, snowballed. But when you're stonewalling, you're adding to that effect. Mm-hmm. When you're being overly critical, you're adding to that effect. It's not always just one person. It does take two. It takes two. So just, being mindful of those things. Walking in unforgiveness is such a heavy burden, and you have the power to be free of that.
You got the power.
I got the power.
I knew. I was setting that up. Great. Okay, so we got a couple Q&As.
Yes, we do. Let me
bring through
up the first one, which I thought was a really good question, something we've kind of talked about in a previous podcast. It says, so my boyfriend's love language is physical touch and mine is quality time. We both are practicing godly dating, but he sometimes makes the argument as though I am not loving him in the way he wants. How can I do that?
Well, whale is the way that he wants sketchy.
True. When I hear that a man wants physical touch, I'm like, of course he does.
Most men's, I think, love language is physical touch. But I would say, okay, well, there's obviously details we need to work out here, but there's a way to show physical touch. Obviously, everybody thinks of, oh, physical touch, like that's inappropriate. But like holding a hand can be physical touch, hugging, like talking and just like, putting your hand on a shoulder, that can be physical touch. And that's where I've known like a lot of people that, Adrian knows has a couple friends. I mean, you can explain it.
Oh, I have two friends that are very into physical touch, and they just want to snuggle on the couch with me. I'm so serious. And they like want like long hugs and embraces. And I'm like, oh, I do love you, but this is like not natural for me. And people that I don't know very well, I'm more of like a good morning, welcome to church. I don't want to shake people's hands. But people that I love and know, I'm open to receiving. But you know what? I think maybe this is an area you can grow in. We're finding, those little touches that can mean a lot to someone to make them feel acknowledged.
Yeah.
And not, pruning up if someone wants to come touch you, if that's not yours. I've had to work on that because at the end of the day, it's okay. I know this is how they want to express their love for me. And I appreciate that they care about me enough to show me affection in a way that means a lot to them. But, if that's the way they need to be loved, I think you do need to work on giving that. And if you need quality time, I think they also need to work on giving you that. Don't only show love the way that you like to receive it. You have to grow to be able to do it give and receive in different ways.
Giving and receiving.
That's always going to be something that we say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it's easier to show somebody's love language when they're also reciprocating it. Like it's harder to, for me to show you quality time when I feel like you're not giving me words. But when it's an equal, it's like, oh yeah, of course. I feel like it's more motivating. So make sure that you're also giving, the love that you feel like is getting reciprocated by them. But yeah, I mean, make sure it's just not like sketchy, like he's not asking things that like would compromise your dating relationship. But if he's not, then, there are ask the question, hey, what would make you feel more loved?
Definitely. And I'm sure that they will have a list ready.
Yeah. So
that's a good one. Another question that we had was
another one.
How can I know that this is God's plan with a guy?
What do you think?
Well,
if the clouds part and a light shines down on them,
I'm not really into signs personally. I think that you can misread things or try to ask for things and then like make up what you see to make it work for you. I mean, I'd say that it's not a thing and it's not impossible, but for me, I feel like people can overanalyze things so that they can see what they want to see. So how to know if God's plan is with the person you're with? I think it takes time. I think if there's things that you are looking for in a person, do they have all those things, or are you creating your list around who they are, or do you have something separate that they've achieved? And do the people in your life support this decision, who you trust and who mentor you and lead you in your life? If you don't have maybe like those array of things, I don't foresee that going well for you, and I don't think that's something God would have for you. So be prayerful about it. If they don't have a relationship with the Lord, if they're not leading you, if they're not in church, if they're not involved, it's hard to think that like that's God's plan. So
yeah, if you don't feel peace about it in your spirit, then it's not God's will. If you feel peace about it, then you have to go to the next marker, right? It's like those charts. I feel like it's those charts that it's like yes, no, and then a line goes down. Yes, no.
Yes.
The line goes down, right? So it's like, oh, if you do you feel peace about the relationship? And it's like, I don't know. Okay, 2 lines down. It's like, do people that love and trust you believe in the relationship? You just have to go down the line.
We should make that graph when we put this out. That'd be good.
But you just have to go down the line and understand and not overanalyze and not freak out thinking that you could make, there's one person in the world and I have to, God gives us free will to make the decision, but we have to make it in wisdom. So I mean, like, I think we complicate it way too much. It's like, hey, do you really love this guy? Yes. Okay, awesome. Does he love the Lord? Yes. Great. Do people love him, respect him, good reputation? Yes.
Does he treat you well?
Does he treat you well? Do you have fun together? Could you see yourself raising a family with this guy? Yes. Okay, then
do your values align?
Exactly.
All of those things come into play. And so I think if you can say yes to all those things and be really confident about it, I think that God will honor that and God will bless that.
And I think if your answer is I don't know, most
Then
of the time,
you know.
yeah, most of the time it's just a no that you're
Fighting.
You're scared to face.
Yeah, it's so true. If your answer is I don't know, you know, you're just not willing to admit it to yourself or to others.
Yeah, you're scared to face the reality that you've committed so much time to a person and now you don't really want to be with them.
You know what? Better know one than the wrong one.
Yeah. So if you, I mean, you just, it's a check. Like, it's like, oh, what comes to mind first? You know, fruit, banana, movie. And then it's like, do you feel peace about it? You know, in your spirit. It's either a yes or a no.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer.
I like it. I think that's good.
In the end.
The end. Thank you guys for watching the episode or listening to the episode this week. We're so thankful for each and every one of you. We are just praying that you have healthy relationships, that you have healthy boundaries, that you're able to take some of the content that we've talked about and learn it, talk about it, apply it to your life. And hopefully this has blessed you and this has given you something, a fresh perspective or a new things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so thankful for you guys. The best way that you can thank us, again, is leaving a review, sharing this with a friend, or just sharing it with anybody that you think would bless them. We love you too, crew, and we will see you on the next episode.